Okay, so today we're going to review what we've been discussing in algebra, and we're going to take a look at this equation. 9 equals 18 minus 3y. Remember, whenever you're given an equation, the first thing to do is to make sure you're comfortable with how the equation is laid out. If you're not comfortable with how the equation is lay it out in a form that makes you comfortable before you begin to work on it. When you are revisiting the layout or reworking the layout, make sure to pay very close attention to the signs. In this equation, 9 is positive, 18 is positive, and minus 3y is negative. So make sure when you are repositioning numbers in laying out an equation, you always pay attention to the sign that's in front of the number or the expression. All right, so this equation can be laid out in other ways. So we're going to look at some options, and then I'll choose a way that I'm comfortable with, and you should do the same. Right, so work along with me each step. Pause the video and make sure to test out your step before you look at mine. So pause the video now and lay it out how you're comfortable with it, and then you can check it against the way that I've laid it out. So for this equation, I have two ways that I could lay this out. I could do 18 minus 3y equals 9. That's one way to lay it out. And that may be a way that you're comfortable with it. But I remember why I'm doing this equation, and I remember that the objective of this equation will be to isolate for 3y. So I have a different layout that I like to use. So I'm going to start with minus 3y, and then it's a plus 18 equals 9. You can use either one of these and you will get the same answer. You'll have the same opportunity to work it out. Okay? So what we're doing here in this step is just to lay out how we like it. Okay, so we're looking at the layout. That's all we've done here. Nothing has been worked out. We haven't done anything else. All right. Now we're going to begin by thinking about our first step. The first step is to remember we're isolating for y in this equation. Y is the variable, the unknown, or the letter, however you refer to it. So what we're trying to do here is to get an equation that says y equals something, right? That's what the objective here is, to get it to that form, y equals a number, right? So we have the answer. So at each step in this equation, our objective is to isolate for y step by step until we get it in the form y equals a number. So let's take a look at what our first step would be. When we're isolating for y, we have to do something. We have to take a look at the equation and figure out what is the relationship. What is the relationship of the number to the unknown? So what is the relationship of 18 to 3y? How are they related? And here we see that 18 is being added to 3y. So we know that this is an addition. 18 is being added to 3y. Why is that important? Because when we're isolating for the variable, what we're going to have to do is at each stage is to use the opposite operation to isolate for the variable. So in this case, remember what we did for opposite equations, opposite operations. If it's a plus, the opposite is minus. If it's a multiply, the opposite is to divide. Right? So keep that on your side chart. Remember that. So now, because we know that this is a plus 18, we know we're going to have to minus to get rid of it. So minus 3y plus 18 equals 9. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to minus 18 here, because we know plus 18 is going to minus 18 to get rid of it. So this minus 18, anything I do on the left, I have to do on the right. So I'm going to minus 18 on this side as well. And that's the first step in isolating for this variable. How do we know? Because this 18 minus 18 gets us to 0, and we need to zero out that term. So this, whatever we do here in the first instance, the one beside the unknown expression needs to go to 0 because we're isolating for this. So step 1 is to isolate this expression. And so we get this to be 0, and we do the same thing on this end because we're minusing 18 here and we're minusing 18 there. And now we can figure out what is left. We remain with minus 3y. There's nothing here. This is now 0. So minus 3y equals 9 minus 18. That's the first level of isolating the variable, right? And so then we can calculate this, and we know minus 3y will be equal to 9 minus 18 will give us a negative 9. Great. So we're down to this. We have one more level of isolation to do, but we also realize now we're working with two negative numbers. And so we can take a pause and figure out how do we change these into positive numbers, because we prefer to work with positive numbers. And we know when we're working with positive numbers, negative numbers, we know how to turn it into positive, because we know a negative times a negative equals a positive. So we know we can multiply 1 by any number and it won't change. So in this case, we're going to multiply by negative 1, because this negative 1 times a negative number will get us a positive number. So we're going to multiply here by negative 1. And anything we do on the right, we're going to have to do on the left. So we're multiplying minus 3y by negative 1. And then we're going to have to also minus the negative 9 by, we're going to have to multiply negative 9 by minus 1. So we're doing minus 1 times the negative 3y, and it's going to be equal to minus 9, again, times the negative 1. And really all that does, it gets us to turning our signs into positive signs, essentially removing the negatives. Okay, so now we end up with 3y equals 9. Right? So essentially by multiplying by negative 1 on both sides, we've pretty much done this, made those two signs positive. And now this is easy for us because we're comfortable working with 3y equals 9. We have to continue to isolate for this variable because we're not looking for 3y, we're looking for y. And I know that intuitively you look at this and you figure out the answer, but you need to make sure you're paying attention to the next step in isolating a variable. The next step is to figure out again, what is the relationship with this number 3 and the y? This number 3, the 3y, is the same as 3 times y. So we know 3y, we're multiplying here, and if we take a look at our opposite sign, we know we'll need to divide, which makes this an easy operation for us. We're going to divide by 3. When we divide by 3, we know that this value will be 1. And then 1y will be equal to y on this end. And we divide by 3 here. And that's an easy operation for us. But we know y will be 3. So 3y over 3 and 9 over 3. Opposite operation, 3 times y, 3y divided by 3. So that's easy. And now we have the answer, y equals 3. But don't rush to write down your answer. Go back now and let's double check. We double check by substituting y equals 3 into the original equation. The original equation is 9 equals, remember there, 9 equals 18 minus 3y. So when we have this, we're going to substitute now for y equals 3. Let's see if it works. So 9 equals 18 minus 3 times y, which is 3. So 9 equals 18 minus, and we know 3 times 3 is 9. 9 equals 18 minus 9 is 9. Must be equal. 9 equals 9. So we are happy with our answer. y equals 3. And now you can check that box and go on. So remember the steps we looked at? Remember the things that are important. The layout, isolating for y until you get it in the form y equals a number. Remember the opposite ones. Remember the objective when you're isolating is to zero out this term, to remove it from here and get it on that side. Remember the objective here is to make this 1 so that we can get to y. And remember, when we're working with negatives, you have the option to change the negatives by multiplying by another negative number. It won't change a value because 1 doesn't change a value, but the negative signs have the effect of giving you positive numbers to work with. Hope that helps.